Hello, everybody. My name's Wendy Fenton, and I'm the coordinator of the Humanitarian Practice Network here at ODI, at the Humanitarian Policy Group, and I'd like to welcome you all here today and to the 130 or so people who've also signed up to watch online. Today we're here to talk about the Central African Republic, and specifically we're focusing in on protection of civilians. And the issue here is how to prioritize the protection of civilians. Are we doing enough in the Central African Republic? The CAR, it's often described as a silent or forgotten crisis, and the continuing violence and daily targeting of civilians by numerous armed groups means that protecting civilians has to remain the top priority. I believe an estimated 5,000 people have been killed so far since the crisis began, and more than 1 million people have been displaced, and approximately 2.5 million people, over half of the population, are in need of humanitarian assistance. This issue of the exchange, in this issue, we have a number of different articles and cover a number of different issues, but the protection issue is the one that we want to focus on here today. And we have a very distinguished panel here. We've got, on my right, starting here in London, Veronique Barbalet, who's a research fellow with the Humanitarian Policy Group here at ODI. She's a political scientist by training, with a particular interest in humanitarian policy, humanitarian negotiations with armed non-state actors, conflict and security, protection, gender-based violence, and livelihoods. And previously, she worked at the World Food Programme, but she's done research here on humanitarian policy issues in CAR, Chad, Kenya, Mali, South Sudan, and Sudan. On my immediate left is Anthony Neal. And Anthony is the author of an article in The Exchange on efforts to promote reconciliation and enhance social cohesion in Central African Republic. And he is the humanitarian policy assistant at CAFOD. And Anthony provides country-specific policy analysis to inform CAFOD's advocacy work in humanitarian crises. And he's the coordinator of the UK NGO advocacy group on Central African Republic. And then on his left is Andre Heller-Parash. Is that correct? I forgot to check before, so I haven't massacred your name too badly. And Andre is the head of programs for Médecins Sans Frontières, and he's worked for MSF in Chad, Central African Republic, where he's just most recently come from, DRC, Yemen, and South Sudan. And Andre leads MSF's program unit here in the UK, is that right? Mm-hmm. Focusing on humanitarian and health policy and practice. And then joining us from Washington, D.C. at Interaction, kindly hosted by Interaction, is Alison Giffen, who has also co-authored with Marla Keenan an article on prioritizing the protection of civilians in peacekeeping operations in CAR. And Alison is a senior associate and co-director of the Stimson's Future of Peace Operations program and leads Stimson Civilians in Conflict project. She's an expert on peace operations and the prevention of violence against civilians. She has more than 15 years of policy advocacy and research experience. And she's traveled to CAR in March this year to assess protection challenges. And next to Alison is Jenny McAvoy, also joining us from Washington, D.C., and she's the Director of Protection for Interaction, and she's responsible for developing and leading collaborative efforts of Interaction's members and other interagency fora to enhance humanitarian protection. Jenny's expertise includes humanitarian access and protection of civilians in armed conflict, amongst many other things, and she's worked, I know, in many locations around the world in many crises. And I believe still to join us is Driss Muhmane from CRS, who is a program director there. We tried to have Joseph Muyango Sangaire from Bangui in CAR, who is a peacebuilding specialist for CRS, join us by video link, but we couldn't establish a consistent enough link. So unfortunately, he won't be able to join us. But that's a shame, because it would have been very good to have had the perspective directly from Bangui. But we do have Andre here, who has just come back, and I'm sure a number of you in the audience will also have your own reflections to add. Before we start, I just wanted to tell you that there is you should turn your phones on silent, but there's a hashtag for tweeting, and you're welcome to tweet. I think it might be up on the screen, but it's the hashtag sign car crisis. And without further ado, we're going to go ahead. We're going to have about 35, 40 minutes of questions here. I've got a few questions I'd like to direct to our panelists. We're going to have a panel discussion, and following that, we'll open the floor to the audience, both here and online, for questions and comments. And so we're really interested in getting an active discussion going here, so please do join in. Hold your questions and comments until that time, but please make note of them. And we'll be receiving those also from our online audience.